This is Kanji in Danzan-Ryu Jujutsu. I'm George Arrington. In this video, we're going to look at more of the kanji from the Nage board in Danzan-Ryu. And in part 2, we're going to look at techniques 6 through 10. Once again, the source of this information comes from the graduation scroll that Professor Henry Okazaki gave to his students upon reaching the rank of second-degree black belts. In this video, we're going to look at these techniques, these 5 techniques from that scroll. So, continuing from the previous video, we come to technique number 6, Soto Momo Harai. Alrighty, let's take a look at the kanji for that. Again, we'll look at the hiragana that make up the kanji. The hiragana, once again, is the phonetic characters, and the kanji are the pictographic characters. So Soto, this is so. I'll use my laser pointer here. This is so, and this is to. And the kanji for this looks like this. And we saw this earlier when we on the previous video when we talked about sotogama, means outside. Now here's a new one. This is the hiragana for mo, and then it's repeated mo. And what that translates to is this character, which stands for thigh. We're going to talk a little more about this word, momo, and there's another character different from this one that we'll look at in a moment. And then finally we look at harai, which means sweep. As I mentioned in the last video, you would look at a word like this and say, with a Western eye, you would look at this and say harai. But remember that in Japanese, every syllable is given approximately equal weight. So this is harai, or harai, and that means to sweep. Okay. So this in Danzan-Ryu is an outside thigh sweep. You sweep to the outside of their thigh with your leg and throw them over top of your leg. So let's take a look at this character here. This is Momo. Now it is also pronounced mata, and in the next technique we're going to see something interesting about that. Normally, if you're speaking Japanese and you want to say thigh, you would say mata, because momo might be confused with this character, and this means peach tree. This is momo. So the momos are the peaches, and that's what this character says. This actually means peach tree. Now, one interesting thing about the kanji is that they have what are called radicals, and this one that I've just highlighted is the radical for momo, and what it refers to is it could be a moon, the radical for moon, but more often it means flesh or meat. So this meat radical or flesh radical indicates that this is probably a body part. Okay, so if you're looking at a character and you see this radical or this piece of the character in front, that might mean that it is a body part. On the other hand, this radical right here means tree, and so usually plants you'll see if you see that character there, it might mean a plant. Okay, so the next technique is called uchi momo harai, and we saw uchi before. Uchi, and if you recall, that's the kanji for uchi, and it means inside. And the next two terms, momo is thigh, and harai is sweep. Okay, so now the previous one was soto momo harai, or outside thigh sweep. This is inside thigh sweep. And for those of you who know Danzan-Ryu, the technique is done by sweeping your leg between your opponent's legs and upending them in a throwing technique. Now, this is a good time to talk about something. In Danzan-Ryu, there are a lot of throwing techniques. There are also techniques in Kodokan Judo. And some of the techniques are similar, and some of them are very, very different. And so let's look at some comparison between Danzan-Ryu and Judo. Okay, for instance, let's start with this one. Uchimomo harai in Danzan-Ryu is called, in Judo, is called uchimata. So they actually use the mata voicing for this thigh character, this one, when they write uchimata. So if you're a judo student and your teacher says to do uchimata, then you would do the same type of technique that we do for uchimomo harai in Danzan-Ryu. Let's take a look at a few more. Now, our seoi nage that we'll get to in a minute on this video, the way we do it in Danzan-Ryu is more akin to the judo's ippon seoi nage, which means we use the single arm or one-armed throw. And the seoi, we'll get to what that means in a couple of techniques here on this video. But so in Danzan-Ryu we say seoi nage. In judo they say ippon, or one-armed seoi nage. Okay, the next one, sasai ashi, we saw this in the previous video, and this was a leg stopping throw, or a propping leg throw. In judo, however, you'll see this written this way, sasai tsurikomi ashi. The tsurikomi means lifting and pulling throw. So this is propping, lifting, pulling leg throw is implied there in judo. So in Danzan-Ryu we call it sasai ashi. In judo they would call it sasai tsurikomi ashi. Okay, now what we do as sotogama is really not, there isn't an exact analog in judo. The closest thing you probably can get to that is a technique called kosotogake, or minor outside hooking technique. Minor outside hook. Gake means to hook. And so that's very similar to the kama-shaped foot that you use in sotogama. Now in Danzan-Ryu we have a technique called kanisute. This is later on really the last five techniques in the board. And what this means, kani means crab, and sute means to sacrifice, to allow yourself to fall down. So kani sute means crab sacrifice. However, the judo version, or the judo name for this, is a little more descriptive, and they call it kani hasami. Hasami means scissor, and the way you do this technique is you jump up and scissor the opponent with your legs and throw them down. So what we call crab sacrifice, the judo people call the crab scissor throw. And in fact, this is kani hasami is a like I say, a much more descriptive version of that. And finally, we have this technique called yamarashi. Now, judo also has a yamarashi that is kind of a mysterious throw. There was a student of Jigoro Kano named Shiro Saigo, who was the master of this technique called yamarashi, or mountain storm, and we'll get to that later on in the next video, or in the couple of videos from now. And it's really unclear to a lot of people how he did that technique. Some people say it was done one way, some say it's done another way. However, nowadays in judo, they do this as a kind of a blend between an outside thigh sweep and an outside reaping throw. But our best analog to Yamarashi in judo is osotogari, or major outer reaping throw. And I put a plus there because in the Danzan-Ryu version, we actually do more than just throw them down. We throw them down and we do a strangle and an armbar on the technique. So that's just as a point of interest for you on the names between Danzan-Ryu and judo. Okay, so we come upon this technique called ogoshi. This is kind of the go-to technique for a lot of throwing arts. The hiragana is this. Now this does not say, this hiragana is o, and this is also o. So it's not o, it's a long o sound. So it'd be o, and what we use as a kanji for this is this character here. And it means major or large. Large, big, major, all of those terms apply. And this technique, now we don't, as we saw in the previous video about gamma, had to be kama. Goshi, when we put it into our Japanese word processor, has to be koshi. So this is ko, and this is shi. You might recognize that from the previous video. So this is koshi, and what koshi means is the hip or waist, sometimes also called the loin, but we'll just say hip. So major hip, and the word throw is usually implied there. So major hip throw. So this is big or major, and this is hip. Now, I'll remind you here, notice that the radical here is the meat radical, so this indicates a body part. Okay, and just for interest, and kind of the way I remember how to write this is you write the niku radical, the meat radical, and then this is the character for west, and this is the character for woman. Now, why they put the west and the woman in here for hip, your guess is as good as mine. I'm sure there's a reason, but I don't happen to know it. But now let's look at this character, this character here. Where does this come from? Why does this mean large? Well, I think if I showed you this picture, you'd understand. This is the picture of somebody with their arms outspread and their feet spread apart, saying it's this big. It's big. So that's where this character comes from. Now, this character can also be voiced in the following way. You could say tai. This is ta, and this is e. So tai, tai, tai. Oftentimes you'll see this with the voicing marks on the ta, and it would look like da-e, or dai. You'll see this oftentimes when they talk about Dai Nippon, all Japan Sporting Federation, or whatever they have. And then also it can be pronounced as o-ki. This is o, so it's o, which is o, then ki with an e sound on the end. So this part would be ki. So this is o-ki, o-ki. So that's ogoshi, the major hip throw. Now the next technique, utsuri goshi, is markedly different between Danzan-Ryu and in judo. First of all, let's look at the hiragana. This says u, this says tsu. You would write it as tsu, utsuri, utsuri. And the character for that looks like this. It means to exchange or to shift. And then, as we saw in the previous technique, koshi or goshi is the hip or waist, or loin sometimes is done that way. Now, this brings up an interesting thing. Since we're talking about kanji, I'm going to talk a little bit, or two things about this character here. All characters have what's called a stroke order. When you write them, you are supposed to write them in a particular order. So each one of these little marks is supposed to be done in a particular order. And I thought I'd show you here what the correct stroke order is for utsuri. Now, you would start here. You see it says 1 here. So you start where the 1 is, and you go down like that. Then 2, you come across this way. 3, you come up here and go down. 4, you go this way, and 5, you go this way. And then this next part, and by the way, this part, which looks like a tree, is actually a tree that has been forked, or it goes in two different branches. And then this one, you start here and go like that. Then the 7 stroke goes around and down. That's all one stroke. And then 8 is that little short stroke. 9 goes down. 10 goes around like that. And then 11 goes like that. And this actually means name. But anyway, so why is this called a shift, or what does this mean? Well, one interesting thing about this particular character, another place that this kanji is used, is in hospitals. If they want to take a patient from the bed and put them onto a gurney or something like that, then they use a device that looks something like this. They take the patient, they roll them over to their, in this case, to their right side. They'll put a pad underneath them, have them roll back, and then use these two things to shift the person onto this pad. And then it's easy to move them onto the gurney. And they use the term utsuri for this. So I thought that would be interesting to see that. So, and in one way, this explains why the judo technique is the way it is. And I encourage you to look at YouTube videos on how utsuri goshi is done in judo, and you'll see why they call it a shifting hip throw. And then finally, for this video, we're going to look at the technique called seoi nage. And as I said, in judo, they would call it an ippon seoi nage, a one-arm shoulder throw. Let's take a look at what the kanji say. So the first one, se means back, and it uses this character here. Okay, that character means back. This says oi, or oi, and the character looks like that. It means to carry on the back. So this is the back carry, and then nage is throw. So back carry throw, back carry throw. So you're toting something or someone on your back, and how you get into that position. There are several different ways to do that. Typically, you take their extended arm and you pull them up over your back and throw them over your shoulder. Sometimes it's called a shoulder throw because you're throwing them over the shoulder, but the term seoi means back carry. And by the way, this term seoi, if you want to look at some pictures of how this might be interpreted, just without the judo connotation, just back carry, in Japanese you would see this described as seoi. Seoi. So someone is giving somebody a piggyback ride. And indeed, this might be called seoi as well. So there you go. As I mentioned last time, a really good reference for a lot of the kanji that you find in Danzan-Ryu is my book Mokoroku and Kaiden Sho. This is where I took several different Japanese documents from Danzan-Ryu, that came directly from Professor Okazaki, and translated them in a variety of ways. What I show is the actual picture of the document, a section of the document, a printed version of that's easier to read, because sometimes these characters are difficult to read. For instance, you can see in the background here, some of these characters, like that is a difficult one to read, that says to, but it takes the actual document, and I put in the printed version, and then how that's read in a romanization. So how would you actually, if you wanted to say this in Japanese, how would you say it? And then finally the English translation of those. And I go through several different scrolls, and also a document called the Kaiden Sho, which was the document that was given in 1948 by Professor Okazaki to some of his students. And this is available at Amazon.com, so I hope you'll pick that book up. So I thank you for watching, and stay tuned for part 3. See you soon.